The sun rose over cobblestone streets, unaware that blood would soon stain them. Behind the city walls, merchants and knights alike faced a storm of steel. This is the story of Visby 1361, where medieval ambition met its most brutal reckoning. In the heart of the Baltic Sea, a town thrived quietly for centuries. Visby, with its towering walls and cobbled streets, was a jewel of trade, culture, and prosperity. Imagine a place where the air itself felt rich. Merchants brought spices, furs, and silver. Artisans sculpted stone and wood into wonders of medieval craftsmanship. It was a place where the hum of daily life seemed eternal, where wealth and security created the illusion of permanence. Picture it. The town lay in the soft morning light, its cobbled streets gleaming faintly. Traders opened their stalls, the smell of fresh bread mingling with salt from the nearby harbor. Children ran freely through narrow alleys, their laughter echoing between stone walls that had stood for centuries. For its citizens, the world beyond the harbor seemed distant, almost irrelevant, as if deciduous walls could hold back not just invaders, but time itself. Merchants counted silver coins with careful hands, and artisans shaped wood and stone with patient precision. The market square buzzed with activity, voices overlapping in a chorus of commerce and conversation. Ships bobbed gently in the harbor, their sails bright against the blue sky, carrying goods from distant lands. Life here seemed unshakable. People went about their routines, unaware that the very prosperity they took for granted was drawing the eyes of those who hungered for more. Yet, beyond the horizon, winds of ambition and vengeance were gathering. Forces driven by greed, strategy, and the thirst for dominance were approaching not with diplomacy, but with the certainty of war. They moved with discipline, their armor glinting under the rising sun, a tidal wave of steel ready to crash upon a city unprepared for the sheer scale of its fury. The calm that had defined Visby would not survive the day. While the city slept, armies moved across forests and plains with purpose disciplined, merciless, their banners snapping in the wind. Men drilled relentlessly, swords glinting, spears sharpened. Each step was measured, each breath a preparation for the chaos they were about to unleash. Plans were drawn in quiet camps, strategy debated over maps, and vengeance whispered in the officers' councils. Their approach was silent, methodical, and unstoppable. Back in Visby, the citizens remained blissfully unaware. Guards paced the walls, their eyes scanning the horizon, seeing nothing more than waves of morning mist and the distant glimmer of the sea. The church bells rang, signaling the morning prayers, and the scent of incense mingled with that of fresh bread. Every corner of the city pulsed with life. Yet beneath that pulse lay a fragility no one could yet perceive. It was in this fragile calm that the story of Visby's infamous day would begin. The very streets that nurtured prosperity, laughter, and routine would soon become the stage for a conflict so brutal that it would be remembered for centuries. The calm before the storm was not merely a pause in the rhythm of life. It was the deceptive breath of a city on the edge of catastrophe, a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary were about to collide. And then it happened. The tranquility shattered with the first clash of steel and the echoing cries of men. From the horizon came a force unlike anything the town had ever faced. Soldiers poured across the fields, their armor catching the sunlight, their banners snapping in the wind like thunderclaps announcing the storm. The calm streets, once filled with the chatter of merchants and the laughter of children, now quivered under the approach of something inevitable, something unstoppable. When the invasion struck, the streets erupted into chaos. Defenders scrambled to the walls, spears in hand, arrows notched, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. The town's fortifications, strong and imposing, were tested immediately. Siege engines rolled forward, their wheels grinding against the cobblestones outside the gates. Every street became a potential trap, every alley a theater for courage and desperation. Knights clashed with invaders, banners tore in the wind, and every corner of the town became a battlefield. The sound of swords meeting shields, cries of the wounded, and the rumble of siege engines transformed the serene town into a theater of brutality. The first waves of attackers struck with precision. Shields clanged, swords met swords, and the air filled with the sharp temps of blood and smoke. Archers lined the battlements, releasing volleys of arrows into the advancing ranks, yet the attackers pressed on, forming lines that seemed impervious to injury or exhaustion. Merchants and townspeople who had never held weapons grabbed whatever they could find, creating desperate barricades in the narrow streets. Their courage tested in the furnace of conflict. Horses thundered through the town, hooves smashing stalls and sending goods flying, while infantrymen hacked and parried, each movement a fight for survival. The air vibrated with a cacophony of fear and bravery intertwined. Fires broke out in the chaos, smoke curling into the sky and obscuring the once clear horizon. The streets were no longer paths for trade or celebration. They had become a labyrinth of life and death, each turn offering both danger and the slim chance of survival. Every decision mattered. A wrong move meant death. A correct one could save a life, a street, or a wall. Visby's walls, once symbols of security, became a grim witness to human resilience and despair. Traders, citizens, and soldiers alike faced choices they had never imagined: to flee, to fight, or to perish. As the battle progressed, the tactics of the invaders became evident. They struck swiftly, overwhelming points of resistance, isolating defenders, and exploiting every weakness in the town's defenses. Every stone wall, every fortified gate, every narrow passage became a crucible where human will and martial skill were measured in blood. The defenders fought with valor, yet each victory was fleeting. For every attacker felled, another seemed to take their place, relentless and merciless. The townspeople, caught between hope and horror, witnessed the transformation of their city. Familiar streets became arenas of carnage. Once quiet squares turned into scenes of panic and desperation. Families huddled in cellars, praying that the violence would pass them by, while the brave few attempted to repel the invaders with whatever they had. The line between heroism and tragedy blurred, and the human spirit was tested in ways that routine life had never demanded. The attackers advanced with tactical brilliance, cutting through defenses, flanking positions, and striking with a speed that seemed almost unnatural. Even as small groups of defenders held their ground temporarily, the momentum of the assault never faltered. It was a collision of discipline against courage, strategy against desperation, planning against improvisation. Every clash, every shout, every act of defiance or submission contributed to the unfolding narrative of a city under siege. The battle was not just of soldiers. It was of strategy, courage, and the desperate hope that the city might endure. Every fallen fighter left a story etched into stone. Every clash, a memory of what happens when ambition meets an unyielding human spirit. By the end of the day, Visby had changed forever. Wealth was plundered, lives were lost, and the echo of steel lingered long after the invaders departed. Yet, even in its devastation, the battle left a legacy, a reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered, and how courage and resilience are tested in the fires of conflict. This is not merely a story of conquest. It is a story of humanity under siege, of a medieval town caught in the relentless tide of ambition, and of the echoes that a single day of fury can leave across centuries. The stones of Visby still whispered this tale to those who walk its streets today, a solemn lesson from the past. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into history. We'll see you in the next one. By midday, the streets of Visby were transformed into a theater of relentless combat. Smoke, blood, and fire mingled in the air, turning the familiar, prosperous town into a landscape of horror and heroism. Imagine merchants, who just hours before bartered over silks and spices, now fighting desperately beside blacksmiths and laborers. Their survival depended not on coin, but on courage and quick thinking. Knights, once distant symbols of honor, battled with the same raw urgency as ordinary citizens, their fates suddenly intertwined with the city they had sworn to defend. Every corner turned, every gate stormed, and every wall scaled became a story of desperation, valor, and the brutal calculus of war. This wasn't just a conflict of soldiers. It was a collision of ambition and survival, of meticulous preparation and frantic improvisation, of life and death under an unforgiving sun. In the chaos, one truth became terrifyingly clear. The fate of Visby was no longer in the hands of its citizens alone. The invaders' discipline, their chilling coordination, and their unyielding momentum were forces the town had never before faced. Streets became brutal lines of confrontation, alleys turned into arenas of courage, and every stone wall stood as a silent witness to human resilience and vulnerability. The fury of the invasion had arrived, and the town, once secure and prosperous, was now caught in a relentless storm. Survival demanded every last ounce of courage and every fragment of strategy the defenders could muster. The smoke of battle lingered long after the final clash of swords and the thunder of hooves had faded, leaving Visby transformed in ways no one could have foreseen. The streets, once alive with laughter and trade, now bore the deep scars of relentless violence. Cobblestones were stained with blood, and walls were pockmarked from arrows and fire. Survivors wandered like shadows through the ruins of their own city, their eyes wide with shock, their hands trembling from the weight of what they had endured. The battle had ended, yet its imprint would echo through the centuries, marking the town not just as a site of conflict, but as a testament to the extremes of human courage and suffering. The aftermath was a landscape of devastation. Homes that had sheltered generations were reduced to rubble. Shops that had been the lifeblood of the town's economy lay emptied and destroyed. The harbor, once bustling with merchants and traders from across the Baltic, was littered with the debris of ships set aflame or smashed against the quay. The town's celebrated walls, which had given its citizens a profound and ultimately false sense of security, now stood as hollow sentinels, silent witnesses to a violence that had far exceeded their capacity to protect. Every street corner, every alley, and every gate carried the memory of the clash, a stark reminder that even the strongest fortifications could not resist organized fury when it arrived with such unrelenting force. Amid this physical destruction, the true human toll became tragically apparent. Families began the grim task of counting the missing, mourning those who would never return. Survivors told stories of valor and desperation, of ordinary men and women who had risen in moments of unimaginable crises to hold back the tide, even if only for a moment. Tallies emerged of merchants wielding swords they'd never held in anger, of citizens risking their lives to save their neighbors, of knights and soldiers fighting not for glory, but simply to preserve what little remained of their home. These narratives of courage were etched into the collective memory, a mixture of pride and sorrow that would define Visby's identity long after the invaders had departed. The economic impact was immediate and profound, with goods plundered, wealth destroyed, and trade completely disrupted. The prosperity that had once drawn people to this island town now seemed fragile and fleeting. Markets lay silent, the docks were empty, and the familiar rhythm of commerce was replaced by the grim, heavy work of rebuilding. Yet, even in the depths of despair, the resilience of the people began to shine through. Plans for reconstruction started almost immediately, as survivors cleared debris, tended to the wounded, and salvaged whatever could be saved. The city would rise again, but the shadow of 1361 would forever linger, shaping the priorities, defenses, and psychology of its citizens for generations to come. Culturally and psychologically, the battle left an indelible mark. The streets and walls, still bearing the physical scars of the conflict, became a powerful symbol of both vulnerability and defiance. The story of that day was recounted in homes, in marketplaces, and in the quiet corners of Chichi's, a blend of solemn warning and fierce inspiration. Children grew up learning of the bravery and tragedy that had defined their town, instilling a sense of historical consciousness rooted in both fear and pride. The memory of Visby 1361 became a lens through which all future conflicts were viewed, a benchmark for understanding the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and the true cost of security that goes untested. Strategically, the battle also altered the political landscape of the entire region. The swift, brutal defeats sent shockwaves through neighboring territories. Leaders and citizens alike were forced to reconsider their alliances, their fortifications, and their military readiness. They now understood that even seemingly impregnable towns could be overcome with planning, coordination, and ruthless execution. Visby became a cautionary tale, a powerful lesson demonstrating the importance of preparation and highlighting the vulnerability of even the most prosperous communities when confronted with a well-organized assault. But beyond the destruction and the loss, the aftermath revealed the sheer tenacity of the human spirit. Survivors, scarred but unbroken, began to rebuild not just their homes, but their very sense of community. Bonds that had been forged in the crisis held stronger than ever. Strangers became allies, and neighbors became family. In churches, in makeshift town halls, and in ruined homes, plans were laid for the future. Education, trade, and civic responsibility were emphasized as the paths to reclaim what had been lost. The city's identity began to shift, blending the memory of catastrophe with a determination to endure, to survive, and to rise from the ruins stronger than before. The echoes of Visby 1361 extended far beyond the town itself. Chronicles, letters, and reports carried tales of the battle across the Baltic and into the courts of Europe. The names of the leaders, the scale of the destruction, and the heroism displayed became part of the broader narrative of medieval warfare. A cautionary and compelling example for generations of rulers, soldiers, and civilians. The lessons learned in the streets of Visby, lessons of preparation, resilience, courage, and the fragility of human constructs, resonated across regions and centuries, shaping military thinking and civic planning alike. In every way, the legacy of that infamous day was profound. The city had been tested to its limits. Its people were forced to confront mortality, chaos, and ambition on a scale that was unimaginable in their daily lives. From the ashes of fire and steel arose lessons, not just of defense and strategy, but of human endurance, of how a community can survive the most ruthless of trials. The battle became more than a historical event. It became a narrative about the extremes of human experience, a story of courage and suffering that would be recounted long after the town had rebuilt its walls and reopened its markets. Visby 1361, with all its horror and its heroism, remains an enduring reminder that history is not shaped solely by the victors, nor by the vanquished, but by the human spirit that confronts chaos, responds to ambition, and continues on despite loss. Every scar in the stone, every story passed down through generations, carries forward the memory of a day when the extraordinary collided with the ordinary, and when a medieval town faced the full, crushing weight of human ambition. It left a legacy that would echo through time, shaping the identity of Visby and the consciousness of all who would hear its tale. Today, the Battle of Visby 1361 stands as a stark testament to the fragility of prosperity and the ferocity of human ambition. It reminds us that peace can be fleeting, that ambition can be ruthless, and that the human spirit is tested most profoundly in the crucible of conflict. Centuries later, Visby's tale continues to resonate, offering a vivid portrait of medieval warfare and the extraordinary strength of communities under siege. It is a story of both loss and survival, of tragedy and heroism, and above all a reminder that history is shaped not just by events, but by the people who endure them, who remember, rebuild, and ensure that the echoes of the past are never forgotten. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as compelling as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.